East, just south of 7500 South. Common Spirit Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advanced healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with Human Kindness is here. Hello, Human Kindness. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, it'll be cool today and tomorrow, but then the temperature starts to climb and we'll get to 60 by Sunday, and the chance of rain will continue to decline. And right now, 37 degrees, cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, time to get beyond just the headlines of all the politics of it all. And it's interesting, often when we justify our own selfish or self-indulgent behavior, we like to recite the Declaration of Independence, that most famous passage regarding our right to pursue happiness. And again, we're getting lost on the headline and we're missing the meaning. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, I don't think it was any accident that Thomas Jefferson very specifically, very carefully, very purposefully placed that line, the pursuit of happiness, into the heart and soul of the Declaration of Independence. Remember, it was mostly a grievance document, but there it was, the pursuit of happiness. And a lot of times we use it to justify selfish, narcissistic behavior, and that's not it. We're missing it. We're turning now to one of my favorite thinkers who actually has a new book out by that title, The Pursuit of Happiness, How the Classical Writers on Virtue Inspired the Lives of the Founders and Defined America. Jeffrey Rosen is the president and CEO of the National Constitution Center. He hosts We the People, a weekly podcast of constitutional debate. And Jeffrey's one of my favorite thinkers, someone I got to connect with when I was a chief of staff back in Washington, D.C. And Jeffrey, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Boyd. It's so great to reconnect.
It's so wonderful. And you've done something there at the Constitution Center in bringing people from different sides of the political spectrum to come together around the principles that actually do unite us as a nation that we often forget there at the Constitution Center. Before we get into the pursuit of happiness, just give us some sense of those conversations and how important they have been to the national dialogue.
Well, thanks so much for asking. And it is so meaningful to host conversations that are respectful with people of diverse points of view. Every week on We the People, I get to call up leading liberal and conservative thinkers for civil constitutional debate about the constitutional issues in the news and history. Sometimes there's agreement, sometimes disagreement, but it's always civil and thoughtful the way the founders intended. And in this polarized time when we're having such fractious fights in our politics, it's just inspiring to be able to bring out the best of America by convening these thoughtful conversations.
Yeah, so important, and those have been so meaningful. I refer to those often. I reflect on those all the time, and I learn so much. I actually learn as much or more from those that I think I might disagree with politically, but they often open my eyes to some of those, founding principles in ways that are new. And I think having that awe and wonder and being willing to be surprised, I think, is an important part of that.
What a beautiful way to put it. That's exactly right. Open your eyes, open your mind to listening to perspectives you may not agree with. And that sense of wonder and openness really is the definition of the American idea. It's recognizing that although we may not agree on the particular applications of the principles of liberty, equality, and democracy, we're committed to the conversation.
Yeah.
It's such a great thing, and it's great to talk with you about it.
Yeah, so grateful for your leadership in leading those conversations, so vital. In your latest book, I think this is so crucial as we get to this pursuit of happiness, that when you go back to the founders, their belief that the pursuit of happiness could really only be achieved through virtue, through discipline, through service. Give us your backstory. What was it that sparked your curiosity to go down this path to write The Pursuit of Happiness?
It was the most remarkable set of synchronicities that led to this project, which transformed the way I thought about the pursuit of happiness and how to be a good person and a good citizen. It was during COVID, and I came across a reading list that Thomas Jefferson would send to kids who were going to law school and who wanted to know how to be an educated person when he was old. And it was a very rigorous reading list. You had to get up before sunrise and read politics and philosophy in the morning and history in the afternoon and literature in the evening. But what caught my eye was the section called Ethics or Natural Religion. And at the top of the list was a book by Cicero called The Tusculan Disputations that I'd never heard of. And Jefferson would send out a passage from this book for people who asked, what's the meaning of the pursuit of happiness? And the passage from Cicero said that happiness is not feeling good, it's being good. It's achieving tranquility of mind, self-mastery, self-composure, and having a good character. So I thought, gosh, I've got to read that book. And then what are the other books on the reading list? And they were Stoic and ancient Greek and Roman philosophers like Seneca and Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, and Enlightenment philosophers like John Locke and Francis Hutcheson and David Hume. So during COVID, I just set out to read the books. I've had this great liberal arts education, studied history and literature and politics, but I just missed these books of moral philosophy because they'd fallen out of the curriculum by the time I was going to college. And I spent COVID reading the books, and what I learned just came as a revelation that our understanding of the pursuit of happiness today is the opposite of what the founders and the ancients and really people through most of human history viewed as the core of happiness. And that, as you said so well, was virtue, self-reliance, self-improvement, self-mastery, so we could be our best self and serve others.
I so love that. And that what a great exercise. We we all ought to go down that path. In terms of that kind of reading and getting to those moral principles that, again, have fallen off the table in a lot of our conversation. Part of what you do in the book is you profile 6 of those very influential founders and looking at how these principles that are really embodied in this pursuit of happiness meant in their lives. Give us a couple examples.
Well, I start with Ben Franklin, who, when he was in his 20s, resolved to achieve moral perfection. And he devised this system where he wrote down 13 virtues like temperance, prudence, order, industry. He saved the one he found hardest for last, which was humility. And he made a chart with the virtues on the x-axis and the days of the week on the y-axis. And he'd pick a virtue a week, and every night he would make an X mark next to the virtue if he fell short of it. So he tried this for a while, and he found it was very depressing because there were all these X marks, but he thought that he was a better person for having tried. And I knew about this system because I practiced it at the recommendation of a rabbi in Washington, D.C. It was translated into Hebrew by a Hasidic rabbi in the 18th century, and it's offered to Jewish people today. It's called the Musar system of character improvement. I tried it with a friend for a while. We also found it very depressing because there are all these X marks, but it's worth trying. But it was so striking that Franklin chose as his motto for this project a line from the same Cicero book that inspired Jefferson, and it's from the Tusculan Disputations, and it basically says, without virtue, happiness cannot be. And that, so in other words, the idea of the pursuit of happiness, which Jefferson put in the Declaration, was first printed and discussed by Benjamin Franklin decades before, because Franklin was older. And Franklin is printing in his newspaper all of these sources that contain the phrase "the pursuit of happiness" by Christian preachers, the most popular preachers of the day, like Wollaston and Tillotson, and also Whig writers who inspired the revolution, like Cato's Letters, and civic Republican writers and liberals like John Locke. In other words, this isn't some secret meaning of the pursuit of happiness that only Jefferson is thinking of. This is everywhere using electronic word searches. I just went through the documents, which are all online now, incredibly, and they all contain the phrase "the pursuit of happiness," and they all use it in this way.
And it's such a powerful way. I just keep coming back to this whole idea that, you just don't think of virtue, discipline, service as the words we think about when we think pursuit of happiness these days. It's another area where I think we've just missed the mark. Give us one other example of one of these other 6 founders. You have Washington, Adams, of course, Jefferson, Madison, Hamilton. Give us one that maybe surprised you in terms of their approach to these virtues and the pursuit of happiness.
One who was surprising and really inspiring is John Quincy Adams. And, the son of the president, when he's a kid, both his mom and his dad are constantly hitting him over the head saying, you've got to be virtuous, use your powers of reason to master your passions, achieve tranquility of soul. This creates so much pressure on him that when he's in his 20s, he's the minister to Russia. He's just turned down a Supreme Court appointment, and he writes in his diary, I'm 27 years old. I haven't achieved anything. I'm wasting my time. I'm drinking too much and going to the theater. He puts so much pressure on himself because he has this Puritan ethic of perfection. Then he becomes president, and two tragedies happen. He loses the re-election to Andrew Jackson, but more significantly, his oldest son commits suicide. His name is George Washington Adams. Huge pressure from his dad. His father's written him letters to live up to biblical perfection, which the pressure is too great, and he becomes an alcoholic and jumps off a steamship. And Adams is just crushed, and he's trying to find some consolation and meaning. What does he do? He goes back to Cicero. He reads the Tusculan Disputations in the White House, and afterward to kind of deal with his grief, because it's a book about grief. And then he emerges from this incredible experience resolved to fight slavery. And then he completely transforms his outlook. He's convinced that slavery violates the Bible as well as natural law, and God will punish America for this terrible sin. And he denounces it. He goes to the House of Representatives. He becomes the leading opponent of the gag rule, which forbids abolitionists' petitions. He introduces a constitutional amendment to end slavery. Then he dies on the floor of the House. He collapses, and his last words are, I am composed. And he gets that from Cicero, the idea that it's the perfectly composed person who has tranquility of soul, who is the virtuous and happy man. An amazing story. Such an inspiring founder.
I love it. We would keep you here all afternoon. This was one of my favorite gifts in my time serving in the Senate, was the opportunity to actually go to Philadelphia to spend an afternoon with Jeffrey Rosen, President and CEO of the National Constitution Center. And Jeffrey, the book is magical. Everyone should read it. And then all of the other sub-reading that comes from it. That's probably my favorite part, is it leads you into 27 more explorations of the principles, which is what we always try to do on this show, is to get beyond the headlines. Remember, we only talk about politics so we can explore society. We explore society so we can talk about the principles and the people in America who actually live them. Jeffrey, thank you so much for making time. I know it's a very busy day. We look forward to having you back as soon as we can to continue the conversation. Everyone else go pick up the book, The Pursuit of Happiness, from Jeffrey Rosen. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Boyd. It was such a pleasure.
Again, that's Jeffrey Rosen, President and CEO of the National Constitution Center. New book out on The Pursuit of Happiness. Now we know what Jeffrey Rosen did during COVID. He dug into some of the classics of the classics and got down to the principles that actually animated this whole idea of what the pursuit of happiness actually is. And it's not a narcissistic pursuit. It's discipline. It's virtue. It's service. That's what founded this nation. That's what drove the founders of this nation. And if we don't get back to those principles, the future doesn't have a lot of promise. If we do get back to those principles, the future holds all the possibilities, and the best is yet to come. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Paid for by government.com. Here's your chance to get 5 iconic United States silver dollars spanning the last 150 years in one amazing set. Experts agree this is a must-have for silver coin buyers. That's right, all 5 silver dollars are legal tender official United States mint coins. If you call 1-800-973-3098 right now, we'll send you this ultimate 5-piece American silver dollar set with each silver coin in extremely fine or brilliant uncirculated condition. Guaranteed. This set includes every type of U.S. silver dollar in American history, issued from 1878 to 2024. Call 1-800-973-3098 now to secure your 150 years of U.S. silver dollars 5-piece set. Plus, receive a bonus display case, an information booklet, and free shipping. Don't miss your chance. Call 1-800-973-3098 now to secure your 5-piece set of iconic U.S. silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-3098.
The Cougars are fighting for their best chance in the Big Dance.
States.
BYU's displayed its resiliency throughout this campaign.
The Big 12 tournament is days away, and then it's the NCAA tournament. Saturday, it's BYU, Oklahoma State. Pregame is at 6 and tip-off at 7 on Utah's legacy home for the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Are you looking to get a COVID-19 booster to stay healthy this cold and flu season? If you join the Beehive study, you'll have the chance to receive up to $550 for getting a booster and completing weekly COVID tests and brief surveys about your health. Don't want to get a COVID-19 booster? That's okay too. You can still join the Beehive study and receive up to $550 for completing the weekly COVID tests and surveys. Help advance research at the University of Utah while taking care of yourself this season. Call 801-203-0320 or email beehivestudy@utah.edu to learn more. You can also visit the study website at beehivestudy.com.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots. And then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from Pi, or go to piinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then Pi Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle, unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. And right now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/free. With ZipRecruiter, one click sends your job to hundreds of top job sites. But more than that, ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies the candidates with the skills you need, sends you a list of great matches to review, then actively invites them to apply for your job. And the results speak for themselves. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's right, the first day. Now you can focus on your business and let ZipRecruiter do the work finding the best people for you. See for yourself. Experience the ease, efficiency, and power of ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ziprecruiter.com/free. That's ziprecruiter.com/free. ziprecruiter.com/free.
What would you say if I told you could get a free furnace? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and I hope you'd at least say, tell me more. Now, before you get too excited, let me explain how this works and why we do our free furnace sale. We feel like we've got the best HVAC techs around and we want to keep them. But the only way we can do that is if they're working and providing for their families, so we set money aside for this free furnace sale. We're only able to give you this great deal because you're helping us keep our guys busy. It's actually great if you've been thinking about replacing both your furnace and air conditioner, because when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services by March 31st to schedule a free estimate. One of our HVAC supervisors will come to your home and explain all the details. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services today and schedule your free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the big white grain elevators that have stood next to I-15 in Ogden since 1941 are being torn down. Second, Utah's looking at an excellent water situation headed into the wettest months of the year. And third, President Biden will announce plans for an emergency port in Gaza during his State of the Union address. 37 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we start to march our way towards the fall election and the first Tuesday of November, of course, there was a lot of consolidation going on over the last few days in the wake of Super Tuesday. Former President Trump now becomes the presumptive nominee on the Republican side, and that creates some really interesting dynamics. We've seen the former president's influence over House Republicans, specifically as it related to the border security bill. And now we need to look at what's going on in the Senate. And a great piece in The Hill talking about that influence and what that might look like moving forward. Alexander Bolton, of course, is a reporter at The Hill, thehill.com, and joins us back on the show. And Alexander, welcome back.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, so as you look at this, let's start with what was the big elephant in the room for the Republicans, and that was the Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, had not endorsed the former president until after Super Tuesday. And give us some of the fallout of his, I wouldn't call it a ringing endorsement, but an endorsement nonetheless.
Well, he announced Wednesday morning that McConnell announced that he would endorse Trump, but he really downplayed the endorsement. He said, look, this should come as no surprise. I've always said I would support the Republican nominee for president in 2024, and it's clear that Trump will be the nominee. So it was not a ringing endorsement, as you said. He was later pressed at a press conference. He was asked some pretty tough questions. Why is he endorsing Trump, given that after the attack on the Capitol, January 6, 2021, in February at the end of President Trump's impeachment trial, McConnell said that the former president was practically and morally responsible for the attack on the Capitol and really excoriated him in his condemnation. And then, of course, the relationship between Trump and McConnell has been terrible, and Trump has insulted McConnell, called him Old Crow. He has insulted his wife, Elaine Chao, the former Treasury Secretary, former Transportation Secretary, the former Labor Secretary, called her, I think, Coco Chow, China-loving Chow. And so he was asked by a reporter, McConnell was asked a reporter, given all this history, why are you endorsing him now? And isn't this a contradiction? And McConnell's answer was, well, I said, 10 days after that impeachment trial ended, 10 days after I condemned him on the floor, I said I would support the Republican nominee for president even if it were Donald Trump. And so McConnell made it crystal clear that he's doing this out of duty to the party, not because he and Trump have patched anything up. And so it would have been, I think, a bigger story if McConnell had not announced that he plans to retire as Senate Republican leader at the end of the year. But I think, in light of what happened on Super Tuesday, you kind of wonder whether McConnell, who always looks, 3 steps ahead on the chessboard, whether whether it's his opinion that Trump is likely to be the next president. So McConnell thought, I better get out of the leadership while the getting's good.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting. I had actually thought that when Mitch McConnell made that announcement that he would not stay on as the Republican leader in the Senate, that would actually give him a little more wiggle room or a little bit of a wider berth to be critical of the president and not endorse, figuring that he wasn't going to be around past November anyway. And to me, it seems that this is just one more indication. Both the former president and I think Mitch McConnell really understand or really live by a more transactional approach to all of this than a relation approach to all of this. And if everything's a transaction, you just kind of do it one at a time. And if you're on the same side, we used to always say that, President Trump would be standing with Mitch McConnell in the morning on one deal because they agreed on it. The next, he'd be firing shots across the bow because they didn't. But it was all very transactional. How do you see that playing out when it comes to some of the policy things that need to be done as we move things forward?
Well, I think McConnell's endorsement of Trump is very transactional. I think if it were a matter of principle, he would not endorse Trump. Yeah. But I think he realizes to preserve his influence, with his colleagues and to leave in good graces with them. He's going to be stepping down as leader at the end of the year, and he's going to serve out, as his final term through the end of 2026. But, he still hopes to exert influence in the conference, and he realizes that, politics is a team sport, and he has to endorse Trump if he's to, maintain, good standing with his colleagues, especially if Trump is president. So there was a transactional decision. Now, in terms of, what kind of impact it has on, policy going forward, if you're trying to get at or trying to, figure out whether McConnell's doing this to try to save Ukraine funding, I think Ukraine funding is, if it's not dead, it's on life support. And, his endorsement of Trump will make no difference there whatsoever. Whether the new speaker, Mike Johnson, has a vote on Ukraine funding, it's going to be entirely based on Johnson's calculation as to what's in his best political interest and what's in House Republicans' best political interest. So, I think this is kind of classic McConnell. He's making the smart move, even though he's endorsing Trump as the smart move because he maintains some influence with his colleagues, and he's trying to cling on to that influence as long as he can.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Great insight as always. We appreciate you making some time for us today. Alexander Bolton, of course, reporter at The Hill. You can check out his piece on this at thehill.com. Alexander, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me on.
All right. Again, that's Alexander Bolton, and I think that's spot on in terms of it. This was a transaction. This was purely political move by Leader McConnell. It'll be interesting to see how this rolls, and it's going to be interesting to me to see how, as things move forward, will this transactional approach to politics and policy, will we get past that? Will we get back to building relationships that can actually lead us towards actually having some compromise, some different kinds of conversations? And to me, that's where we really have to get if we're going to move the country forward. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. We'll come back with our friend Johanna Mask is going to join us from News Nation. We'll talk about the fallout from Super Tuesday and much more on Inside Sources. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. A record-breaking February on our highest peaks in Utah means our water picture is great headed into the wettest months of the year. KSL News Radio's Becky Bruce reports.
Alta set a record last month for the wettest February ever there. And when you look at how much water was wrapped up in the snowpack that we added, it makes sense. We got 157% of what would be considered normal, which in turn puts us ahead of normal for that measurement headed into spring.
The Utah Division of Water Resources says the ground is wetter before spring runoff begins, and that helps us keep more of that water in our reservoirs. All of that water in our snowpack also affects the level of the Great Salt Lake. The state says it's up 1.8 feet since October. If you look at all of the state's reservoir, we're averaging 83% full. Last year, most of them were just about half full at this point. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A jury in New Mexico deliberated only 3 hours before convicting Hannah Gutierrez of involuntary manslaughter. She was the armorer on the set of the movie Rust, where a cinematographer was killed in 2021. ABC's Mark Remillard reports.
Juror Alberto Sanchez tells ABC News that Gutierrez was in charge of the weapons on set and should have made sure they were safe.
Never did the safety checks. Never checked the rounds to pull them out, to look at them, shake them. I mean, if you'd have done that, this wouldn't have happened.
Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed and director Joel Souza was wounded when the gun held by actor Alec Baldwin went off. He faces trial in July. Mark Remillard, ABC News.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average has been climbing today, and the NASDAQ up 234 points right now. And our KSL weather looks like things will be drying out as we move through the weekend. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it. When you're rolling Charmin, up too soft on the potty. Let's just supposed to roll it back, everybody. Roll it back. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. The crib is always stocked. It's our party. Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We're back to a crash-free commute on all the Valley freeways, including I-15 between Ogden and Provo. A report of a possible accident, 2700 east, just south of 7500 south. Spring is here and new deals are blooming at Murdoch Hyundai. Pick your new car at the spring sales event. Receive 0% for 3 years on the Tucson or lease a new Elantra for only $199. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, cool and dry tomorrow with a high around 43. It'll warm up by Sunday with a high of 60. Monday and Tuesday, there's a chance of rain again. And right now, 39 degrees and cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, in the wake of Super Tuesday, it's time to now look forward. We have reached the end of the beginning of the 2024 presidential election cycle, and we want to get a deeper dive into what we think is coming next as we start the next season, the next phase of this whole process. And the question, of course, will be with a country that is none too thrilled with either of the options from the two major political parties. What will happen next? Will it be just a lesser of two evils conversation? Will everyone kind of go to their respective corners and just hunker down, hold their nose, and do the bidding for their political parties? Will there be different discussions? What's the communication strategy for the disaffected? Nobody better at breaking all that down than our friend Johanna Maska, of course, is the CEO of Global Situation Room. She's also a communication executive in crisis and risk management. She was the White House Director of Press Advance for former President Barack Obama. And, of course, we see her regularly on our friends over at News Nation. Johanna, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Boyd, it's wonderful to be with you.
Hey, you have had a big week. We've been watching going around the clock here on all of this. And give us your assessment moving forward. We know both sides really have some enthusiasm gaps to make up. How do you see that?
Big enthusiasm gap. I mean, that's what I was looking at the numbers, and I was just going, this is not good. I mean, people aren't showing up even when there are down ballot races for either candidate. I mean, Biden definitely does not have the base enthusiasm in the same way that Trump does. Trump has a MAGA Republican and extremist, point of view that says government hasn't worked and everybody's the problem and I'm going to follow this one person because I believe that he's going to change it all. And he has certainly hoodwinked a lot of people to believe that he can do that. And so they are showing up for him, but not at exactly the same numbers as last time because he's lost some of those more moderate Republicans who don't believe that the election was stolen. So now you've got this problem, right, for the Biden administration. They need to make sure that people understand, that they remember what the stake is. State of the Union tonight. And so I was brushing up on my State of the Unions, and I watched President Trump's 2020 State of the Union. And interesting in it, of course, this is January, 2020 when we were all caring about our lives like everything was normal. And he had a line in there, protecting Americans' health also means fighting infectious diseases. We are coordinating with the Chinese government and working closely together on the coronavirus outbreak in China. Of course, that ended up not being exactly the case because 3 months later, everyone was shut down and we didn't have our kids in school. And, the Biden administration really is trying to make this push for competency in government, kind of isolate that extremist point of view. We have to work together. How are we going to, bring about the change that we want to? And that isn't always the most sexy message.
It's a little bit of broccoli in a cotton candy world, to be sure. And it's a tough sell. It is a tough sell, and I think it's an area that the Biden team has struggled with to say, look, no, we've done some things, we've done something. I know everything doesn't feel right around your kitchen table yet, but, these are the accomplishments. I just think that's such an interesting challenge for the State of the Union tonight, is to be able to tout. Go ahead.
No, I was talking to the White House earlier today, and I think they're really, they understand that Americans are hurting. And they are very frustrated because they feel that we're in this place with inflation because of profligate spending from the Trump administration, both in the massive tax cuts that really benefited the top earners in the country that then, added to our debt and deficit. And the COVID-19 pandemic relief that in some cases they blessed, right? But it went out the door in an administrative way through the banks that led to more fraud and abuse than we've seen, in all of the money that's been spent in Ukraine. So, they hear the frustration, but Americans don't like to hear that it was somebody else's fault.
Right.
They want to blame whoever's in the White House. But, they inherited this situation where massive amounts of money had gone out the door to stimulate the economy because of the administration's ignoring the pandemic. And so the Biden team is trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to make it real to people, like this cost savings that we're trying to. And they're talking about insulin is capped, cost of prescription drugs for seniors is now capped at $200. They're talking about the child care tax credit, the energy costs that they need to make more affordable. And that is a problem. I don't know, I'm guessing you're experiencing the same, but we're seeing in California massive increases in the cost of energy that, frankly, some of these legislators who are blessing this, they need to find other ways to get federal government support for those energy costs for us to, have an independent energy, our independent energy sources. And they do plan to announce additional policy that will ease the cost of housing tonight, as I understand. So there's a lot that they're trying to make tangible, but gosh, it's going to be hard.
Tough. Yeah, no question about it. And as we look at this, so many of the State of the Unions have just become laundry lists of things that most people kind of get lost in and of itself. I wanted to ask you from just a purely communication strategy standpoint tonight. Obviously, one of the things that a lot of people are talking about is the president's age. I'm not one of those who thinks that should be the central issue of anything. But if you're advising the president tonight, would this not be the communication moment to waltz in there with some energy and some bounce and then to say, I have a 12-minute speech, no applause lines, because we need to have a serious conversation in this country, and we're going to do it tonight. Sit down. Here we go. And have him deliver a very forceful, very specific 12-minute speech, waltz off with some energy, and change the conversation, as opposed to, is there a gaffe? Is there a stumble? Does he look tired? Is his voice weak? Is there a way to get past all of that? How would you advise as the communication strategist tonight?
Well, you and I both know that if he did waltz in there and do a 12-minute speech, all the pundits would be saying, he can't
too
give
tired.
a longer speech than 12 minutes.
That's right. Can't win. You can walk on water, but you can't swim. There's a weakness there.
Oh my God. No, I'm in my 40s and I have good days and bad days.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine your 80s. And look, I understand the concerns about age. I've shared my own concerns with legislators who have been in office for a very long time. And I think, the thing that the administration is trying to do is actually look at this opportunity as one broader than even the president, broader than this night. The State of the Union is going to be the biggest television audience that the president has had so far this year, but they're looking at it as the State of the Union month. And they're putting all of the administration people, like Gina Raimondo, going back to the COVID pandemic, she was a governor then. She got schools open earlier than most governors. Yeah. She's an excellent commerce secretary. She's one who can go on the road and make the case for the economy growing from the middle out instead of the top down, middle, bottom. That's what they care a lot about. So they're looking at it as trying to broaden it from just a conversation about President Biden to, this is about a battle of the soul of our nation. Are we going to work together, or are we going to believe that only one person with their one idea is going to make America great again? And, we know that in an America that's strong, it takes compromise, it takes listening to other viewpoints. And so that's what they're trying to do. And, Boyd, on the length, gosh, there's so much that they want to hit, right?
Right, yeah.
I think, last year it looked like he got a really good night's sleep beforehand. We've talked about on the Hill the various, access that you have to the White House medical unit.
Yeah.
I hope he's getting that coffee, that Red Bull.
A good Red Bull coming up. Maybe this is where we go NASCAR, and we can have this portion of the speech brought to you by Red Bull, this portion by some coffee company, Starbucks.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, Johanna Maska.
I could see President Trump doing that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, let's not do that.
President Biden do that now.
I'd like to retract all of that. All right, Johanna Maska is the CEO of Global Situation Room. We love to talk about communication strategy. Johanna, thanks for joining us today, as always.
It's the best. We will be on the Hill until midnight tonight. We've got 10 to 12 after the State of the Union. We will be on News Nation. Please join us.
You better get your own Red Bull going tonight as well. Good luck to you on that. We will watch and we will follow up when this all falls out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
All right, that's Johanna Maska. Always great perspective. Again, she's been in the trenches. She was press advance for President Barack Obama. She gets how that messaging, how that process works. So I always love to get her perspective. As you could tell, she had been talking to some of the people at the White House, getting that behind-the-scenes look. That's why we go to Johanna. That's why we do Inside Sources. We'll be right back.
Back in 2004, got a letter from the IRS indicating that I was no longer married, and therefore they were to change my filing status to single.
We were really upset.
I'm Utah tax attorney Jordan Wilcox. Listen to what actual clients have had to say about working with us.
As soon as we met Jordan and he started talking to us, number one, he made us feel like we weren't the imbeciles that the IRS had made us feel like for so many years.
I'm Jordan Wilcox. Let's solve your IRS tax nightmare.
We have reduced our tax liability by over $42,000.
Visit taxhelput.com or call 801-657-5951 to schedule your free consultation today.
We can move forward with confidence and assurance that we're okay.
That's taxhelput.com.
It's marvelous, just marvelous.
Intermountain Medical Center in Murray, LDS Hospital in Salt Lake City, and Utah Valley Hospital in Provo are ranked among the 2023 list for best cancer hospitals in the nation by Newsweek magazine, with a high level of comprehensive personalized care and treatment they provide. Intermountain Cancer Center locations provide an integrated, personalized approach to cancer treatment care, close to home for patients throughout the Intermountain West, as well as telehealth services. Brought to you by Intermountain Health and KSL News Radio.
Held over due to popular demand. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Utah State Fair Park. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Utah State Fair Park. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Utah State Fair Park. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Utah State Fair Park. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Utah State Fair Park. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. Over the years, I've talked a lot about hard water takes years off the life of water heaters and other appliances in your home. Leaves scum on the shower walls, and you almost need a jackhammer to remove that. I've talked about how Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer, their water softeners are maintenance-free. You just don't need adjustment, and they do the job with 2/3 less salt than other softeners. But today, I want to talk about the exhilarating feeling of stepping into a hot bath or shower and feeling that pure, soft water cascade over your skin. It feels like every pore in your body wants to stand up and start singing. And afterward, there are no itchy hard water deposits sticking all over you. You really should look into a soft water system from Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. You can learn more about Connecticut by giving them a call at 801-576-8600 or log on to Softwater Utah. Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. Then sit back and enjoy your shower even more.
Les Olson IT's structured cabling is second to none. Tired of old and inefficient cabling? Have an upgrade or remodel planned? Building a new network from the ground up? We offer the very best in low voltage cabling installation, including data, phone, fiber optic, and more. Ask us how to get your free consultation today.
Les Olson IT.
For over 100 years and 4 generations, my family has provided quality installations from the most well-known brands in the heating and air conditioning industry. Hello, I'm Brian Jackson with Manuel Plumbing and Heating. Now, until March 1st, purchase a high-efficient home comfort system and receive a free bypass humidifier or a 5-inch media filter to complete your new system. Give us a call and let one of our knowledgeable sales staff provide a free in-home consultation on what Manuel can do for you and your home. Be sure to ask about rebates and our financing options. Call Manuel today, 801-262-4671.
Tim and Amanda.
Yes, KSL is a trusted institution. I mean, it's a 100-year-old institution, and I know that with that legacy comes a responsibility and a trust. But I want you to know, we have diverse voices at this radio station. Young people, we have people of all different ages, of all different cultural backgrounds, who put their 2 cents into what stories we cover from day to day, a voice that is given to those stories.
When I've been kicking around the Salt Lake City market for 40 years, I felt like I needed a decade of radio under my belt before I even attempted to climb that mountain. So as important as KSL is to you, you need to know that it's an important institution for both of us and something that we take very seriously, in the responsibility of providing the right news and information for you and your families every day and carrying on the tradition of this great radio station.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah's water situation looks pretty good at this point in the year. Second, even the Great Salt Lake is looking better as we head into spring. And third, the armorer on the set of the movie Rust has been convicted now of involuntary manslaughter. 39 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson, and as we continue to march our way towards a pretty brutal election season, there's a lot of things that are impacting how things are going to continue to play out, not just in this election cycle. We always like to project forward a little bit in terms of what's really coming next. And some of the patterns are pretty astounding, and they kind of turn some of the conventional wisdom on its head. We always talk about, when the younger voters are going to step up and step in and take over, when the older Americans are going to either age out or not be such a big number and have less influence. And all of those things are changing, but not quite the way I think everybody thought they were going to change. And so as we look at those kind of voting patterns, a lot of people on the political left and the political right panic when they try to figure out, how are we going to stay in power? That's the question. And so there's always this question of, how are things changing? What's going on? Really interesting. There's been some really beautiful deep dive studies taking place by a lot of the great political scientists that are looking at these patterns, and especially how they relate to political affiliation, how that changes. And normally there's kind of this natural rhythm and cycle to it as people turn over and as the dynamics continue to shift. And there was a great piece by Thomas Edsall, who we've had on this program before. This was in the New York Times, talking about this phenomenon of how things are changing and how they're not changing. And so I want to look at a couple of the pieces from Thomas Edsall's opinion piece in the New York Times today. So one of the interesting dynamics, of course, is the role of minority groups. Obviously, that has an impact on the domestic economy. That's just one element of it. But there's also births, death rates, immigration, red and blue states. All of those things factor into what the makeup of the major political parties are and whether those two major political parties will continue to be the major political parties or whether things will actually begin to shift. So some of the interesting things, of course, hit around who's actually working, and especially those prime age workers, 18 to 64. Things tend to change in terms of your politics and how you're looking at the economy and jobs and so on when you hit retirement age and when you're very young in your career. Those are just very different things. When you're trying to earn more, work your way up the economic ladder, you're looking at things one way. When you're getting towards the end of your career and looking at retirement, things look very different, and the things that matter are different, and so that tends to impact who you affiliate with politically. One of the other interesting components to all of this, of course, is the birth rates. We've talked about that quite a bit on this show and how that will impact things. Democrats, I think, worry a little bit in that space. They've done well with a lot of the immigrants historically, and that seems to be shifting. And then there's also a shift in terms of birth rates. The Latino population, though shifting for sure, historically has been a pretty blue Democratic vote. They've counted on that in the Democratic Party. But the other interesting thing, now let's look at the flip side. On the Republican side, the death rates are the issue. Because you have so many in these very red states that are actually experiencing higher death rates. And again, as those people age out for one reason or another, then your voter rolls shrink a bit. And then who replaces that? You also have this rural-suburban conflict going on. And as we have fewer and fewer rural voters, then that starts to shift. They tend to be more conservative, more entrepreneurial, more family-focused. And so that starts to impact things as well. And so as we look at all of this, it's just a really interesting thing to see from a political standpoint who will go after the younger voters, who will go after the immigrant voters, those coming to the country. Do the older voters continue to show up and show out as they have historically? Do things shift in terms of how they see the political parties? And then you have to start looking at one of the interesting trends as it relates to the birth rate in particular is, of course, the birth rate in the country has gone down significantly. We are just underneath that replacement rate. But if you look at groups that are sort of overperforming in the replacement rate, birth rates, of course, you have, according to one study, Catholics are at 3.6, Orthodox Jews 3.3, Latter-day Saints 2.8, Muslims 2.8. So well above the replacement rate in what are traditionally more conservative communities, where you have a lot of the other groups out there that are not either getting married or not having children or having fewer children. And so do those numbers continue to go down? Anyway, all of that's a fascinating thing to look at from a political standpoint. And so red versus blue is not just the only thing. It's also who's there and who do these political parties continue to speak to, and can they connect with them in a way that's actually meaningful, that matters, that will make them feel like they have a place where they belong. I think that's another thing across the spectrum, that very few voters feel like they really belong either in the Republican Party or in the Democratic Party. And so that will be the most interesting thing to see. Where does that shift go? And does that lead to the rise of other parties? Do we become more like Europe, where we have a host of different parties very focused on particular issues? Is there sort of a big center-left to center-right party that suddenly becomes the majority party, banishing the Democrats and the Republicans to the corners as minority parties? Do we end up with more of a coalition kind of government? Those are all fascinating things to take a look at and to see how those will all play out in the years ahead and what political parties will do as a result. Always say, community and culture lead, the politics will follow. And so that's what we're going to continue to watch as we play that out. All right, as we round out hour number one, hour number two, we are going to focus on the State of the Union. Of course, that will be tonight. Big speech for President Biden as he sets the tone. This is really the kickoff to the Biden campaign 2.0, getting ready to try to win re-election and a second term in the White House. So we'll do a little in-depth as we start the hour at 2:05. We'll get some insight from some of our inside sources in terms of how that's shaping up. And then we'll finish the program today at 2:50 with my annual State of the Union. This will be the 26th year in a row I've actually written a State of the Union address. I know that's a little crazy, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. So stick around. We'll do that at 2:50 today. We'll be right back. Hour number two, Inside Sources, coming up right here on KSL News Radio.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Many are asking if gender discrimination might have played a role in Nikki Haley not receiving more support in her presidential campaign. The founder of the Women in Leadership Project in Utah, Susan Madsen, says yes.
The research in general continues to show, conscious and unconscious, that it is about gender.
Madsen cites a recent survey that found people still perceive political leadership roles as masculine, but she does say beliefs are shifting, especially when more women run for higher office. Utahns are feeling less confident about spending money, but researchers say the decrease in consumer sentiment is not statistically significant. It dropped just over 1% last month, remains much higher, though, than the national average. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The United States is once again conducting strikes in Yemen after 3 sailors aboard a commercial ship were killed in a Houthi missile attack off the coast of Yemen. ABC's Luis Martinez reports.
We know that a U.S. cruiser responded as well as an Indian warship, and there have been images showing the rescue of the members of the crew. It once again points to the Houthis being able to continue to launch these kinds of attacks against commercial shipping, despite the presence of U.S. military and other nations with warships in the region.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 130 points on the day. The NASDAQ is up 241. And our KSL weather looks like things are going to dry out a little bit toward the weekend. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Ah, winter, with its cold, dry air causing that not-so-nice winter nose feeling. Thankfully, you don't have to wait for warmer weather to clear sinus congestion and send winter nose packing. All you need is Navage Nasal Care. Navage helps soothe the inflamed nasal passages that are often part of colds and infections. It flushes a pure, refreshing saline solution through your sinuses to give you the soothing moisture you need. Navage also sucks out the other irritants trapped in your nose, viruses, dust, bacteria, and germs too. Winter might feel like it drags on forever, but Navage works quickly, helping you breathe more clearly in just 30 seconds. No decongestants required. Navage is a drug-free solution that helps you breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier. Get Navage today and make winter a little more bearable. Navage is available online at Navage.com or in stores at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, and Target. Navage, Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
If cabinets were a football team, Euromax cabinets would be the 1985 Bears, maybe the 1984 Niners. If cabinets were a basketball team, Euromax would be the 95-96 Bulls, maybe the 2016-2017 Warriors. If cabinets were a singer, Euromax cabinets would be Neil Diamond, rhinestones, sequins, and all. In fact, Neil Diamond was probably thinking about Euromax cabinets when he wrote and recorded Sweet Caroline. Max and Mike came together to start a cabinet company that brings the unique flair and style of Europe while keeping the craftsmanship and installation of America. Max moved here from Ukraine with years of European style, while Mike has 25 years of cabinet experience here in Utah. This is Hans Olsen, letting you know their service, style, and warranties are unmatched. They can help you design a kitchen to be the talk of the neighborhood. Their showroom's in Pleasant Grove, and you can see their world-class design by going to EuromaxFurniture.com. That's EuromaxFurniture.com. Euromax, built for you.
There are products that offer up to a 20% upfront bonus just for opening an account and up to 12% per year for retirement income. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I've heard from other advisors saying this is too good to be true. No, it's not. We are one of the few who can offer products like these because we're independent. We're not registered with a broker-dealer who tells us what we have to sell, and we don't have to answer to a board of directors who prioritize shareholders over clients. So, is an upfront bonus up to 20% and 12% per year growth for income too good to be true? For most advisors, yes, but not Trajan Wealth. The fact that many of our clients come from other financial advisors is a testament to our value. Experience the Trajan Wealth difference for yourself. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We are looking at a nice and quiet drive on the Valley freeways. No accidents, no delays. And if you happen to be traveling I-15, dry road conditions throughout much of the Wasatch Front and normal KSL travel times between Ogden and Provo. Attention Wasatch Front businesses and property managers. Have winter conditions damaged your parking lot asphalt or concrete surfaces? Call GoPave Utah to get on their schedule. GoPave Utah, GoPaveUtah.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, cool and dry tomorrow with a high around 43. Warms up by Sunday with a high of 60. Monday and Tuesday, there's a chance of rain again. And right now, we're at 39 degrees, cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's that time of the year once again. Tonight at 7 p.m. local time, President Joe Biden will stand before the nation in the well of the House of Representatives to deliver the annual State of the Union address. It's an American tradition that goes all the way back and is actually included in our founding documents. So what do you need to know about it? What can we expect tonight beyond the headlines? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, the State of the Union, as we now know it, used to just be referred to as the annual message from the president. It actually goes back to the Constitution, Article 2, Section 3, which stipulates that the president shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. And while the Constitution doesn't actually define what from time to time means, it has come to mean annual State of the Union. And so I think that's an important thing, that the president is supposed to communicate to Congress the State of the Union. And I will make this point later on in the program when I deliver my version of the State of the Union, coming up at 2:50, that it is the State of the Union. It is not the state of our politics. It is not the state of our government. It is the State of the Union. So we'll come back to that at 2:50. Stick around for that. But I want to get into some of the things that have happened over the years and decades and centuries here in the United States as we look at this annual message from the President of the United States. They matter. And while most of them go unnoticed or unremembered, because sadly, particularly over the last 25 years, They've become either very political on one hand, or just long laundry lists of programs and to-dos and tasks and things that most of them never actually happen, by the way. But it's a lot of rhetoric, and sadly, they've become far more political over the last 8 years than they've been previously. And so that's unfortunate. We even had a season, of course, during the Obama administration where the members of the Supreme Court stopped coming to the State of the Union because they were too political. And that's a sad, sad thing, in my view, that our State of the Union has become just more political theater, more platform than anything else. And that's a little frustrating to me. And now, this is where we are today. Just to give you how far we've fallen perspective for the day. So it used to be you would just have the State of the Union, and that was it. And then, of course, it became politically popular to have the opposing party, the minority party in the country, give a rebuttal to the president's speech to give their side. And that's fine. You can give the other side some airtime to the country. But now we have so many things going on, it's hard to keep score. Because you have some members of Congress who just can't wait until the president actually delivers a speech, and so they don't give a rebuttal. They give a pre-buttal to the president's State of the Union. Now, they usually do that in a fundraising email, along with a really cute, very pithy kind of video that you can catch on social media. And so now you have the pre-buttals and the pre-analysis. You actually had the Senate Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, actually do some of the pre-work for the president tonight on the floor of the United States Senate, saying, here's what we should be thinking about in the run-up to the State of the Union address.
Today, President Biden will make clear that after so much adversity, America's economy is growing, inflation is slowing, and Democrats' agenda is delivering.
That was not a stirring or a resounding preview of coming attractions from the majority leader in the well of the United States Senate today. That, hey, we're doing our job, and we'll keep doing our job. But maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe we should make politics boring again. It might be a little better in terms of our policy, in terms of where we're trying to get. Now, as I said, there's a lot of the State of the Union addresses that have gone pretty unheralded. But you did have something that actually mattered. You had Bill Clinton, of course, made his famous statement that the era of big government is over. That was a significant one. President Reagan, of course, knew how to turn a phrase or two, really began the tradition of bringing people in, guests in. The guest list for tonight is long and lengthening and all very well politically positioned to make points rather than to really honor guests. So I think we've sort of lost the impact of having those guests in the audience. I do want to go to George W. Bush. These are words from State of the Union address in 2002, which was actually his first. You may not know, the very first address a president gives is not a State of the Union. Right after they're inaugurated, the first thing they do is an address to Congress. 1 year later, they get to do their first State of the Union. And for George W. Bush, that first State of the Union came not too long after 9/11.
For many Americans, these 4 months have brought sorrow and pain that will never completely go away. Every day, a retired firefighter returns to ground zero to feel closer to his 2 sons who died there. Last month at the grave of her husband, Michael, a CIA officer and Marine who died in Mazar-e-Sharif, Shannon Spann said these words of farewell: Semper Fi, my love. Shannon, I assure you and all who have lost a loved one that our cause is just and our country will never forget the debt we owe Michael and all who gave their lives for freedom.
And so as we listen to the speech tonight from the president, of course, someone somewhere will be counting the number of applause lines, the number of standing ovations. There's a regular group that goes through how many words were actually uttered, how much time it took. I think Bill Clinton still holds the record for the longest State of the Union address delivered in person. His was 9,190 words back in 1995. Jimmy Carter actually delivered the longest one. It was actually 33,000 667 words, but he didn't deliver it in person. He did it in writing, which was the case historically. That's how they used to always do the State of the Union. It was a written report to Congress. George Washington holds the record for brevity, just 1,000 words in 1790, a little bit longer than a newspaper op-ed, which may not be a bad strategy. I actually think that would be a good strategy for President Biden tonight. It would take him about 8.5 minutes to do it, and it might be a little better received for the country. Anyway, lots to think about. We're going to stay with this conversation and the question around the State of the Union. We'll dig into some of the things we expect to see, what to watch for tonight. And then coming up at 2:50, I'll give you my version. This is number 26 for me. This will be the 26th time I've actually done a State of the Union. Not what I think the president should, could, or would say. It's just one guy with an opinion and a microphone. So that's coming up at 2:50. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
American energy is under attack. Joe Biden has waged a war on American natural resources and made it harder to produce affordable, reliable, and clean energy right here in Utah. Our energy prices are already going up. Biden's policies will make it worse. But Republican John Curtis has our back. There is no greater supporter of unleashing American energy than John Curtis. John Curtis knows our abundant natural resources help keep us free and safe, powers our economy, keeps the lights on, and keeps Utah on the move. John Curtis is Utah tough. He's taken the fight to Joe Biden and the Washington politicians who all want to hurt American energy. And now we need a conservative to take the fight to the United States Senate. We need Republican John Curtis, a strong defender of American energy dominance in the fight for us.
Paid for by Clear Path Action Fund. Not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
Utah's election mess.
We have reports of Wi-Fi problems. People weren't able to pre-register. People being turned away.
The Republican Party struggles to explain what happened.
This claim, the technical difficulties, was due to high turnout. Simply not true.
And why.
What you get with thousands of polling locations run by volunteers.
If the county clerk ran their voting like we just experienced yesterday, they'd all be fired.
Your Voice, Your Vote 2024. All this week on KSL News Radio.
Healthcare with human kindness is here. It's at Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Together, we have a common purpose, partnering with you in health and healing using powerful medicine, powerful technology, and the greatest power of all, human kindness. You'll know it when you see it, because human kindness is in every care site and in every caregiver. Common Spirit Health. Hello, human kindness.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan sea salt body wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
Would you like to be part of an important research study and receive up to $550? The Beehive study at the University of Utah is comparing how well 2 different FDA-authorized booster vaccines protect people against COVID-19. You can decide to get a booster or not and still participate. By joining the Beehive study, you'll have the chance to receive up to $550 for completing activities such as weekly COVID tests and brief surveys about your health. Call 801-203-0320 or email beehivestudy@utah.edu to learn more. You can also visit the study website at www.beehivestudy.com.
Do you enjoy fishing, hunting, or just soaking in the beautiful outdoors? Then you need to check out the KSL Outdoors Show, airing Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. and midnight on KSL 5 TV. Outdoors with Me, Adam Eagle is a unique show that takes viewers on a journey through Utah's beautiful backcountry. Watch it live every weekend or find the Outdoor Show on YouTube, KSLOutdoors.com, Facebook, and Instagram. It's the KSL Outdoors Show, brought to you by Camp Chef.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Our goal every day on Inside Sources is to help you divide the rage from the reason, elevate the conversation, connect the dots, and make the news make sense in your world. We have conversations with great thinkers, with great leaders, and great people who are just out there making a difference in the world. Now, we do talk about politics, but only so we can discuss society and culture. And then we explore society and culture so we can discuss principles and the people in America and the state of Utah who actually live them and apply them every day. We bring the best and brightest minds to the state of Utah, and we love to take the Utah model and send it out to our nation's capital and beyond. Every day on Inside Sources, you'll be part of that conversation. To help you understand things in a different way, we'll get you to think again about what you think you know, but most important, we're going to help you have confidence to have crucial conversations in your community and in your own home.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, do it now. Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah's Women in Leadership Project thinks gender discrimination played a role in Nikki Haley's presidential campaign. Second, the economic measure of consumer sentiment is higher in Utah than in other states, but it hasn't changed much in the past month. And third, Houthi rebels in Yemen still have enough missiles available to shoot at commercial ships in the Red Sea. Right now, 39 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. As we march our way towards the State of the Union tonight, President Biden steps to the podium there in the well of the House of Representatives for an important speech for him and for the nation. I'll remind everybody that it is a State of the Union, not a state of the government or the state of politics, and that's where things should be. I doubt that's where we'll end up tonight. Both Republicans and Democrats in the White House have, I think, ruined the State of the Union for the last decade plus. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But I want to get into what should we be watching for? What are some of the key components for President Biden? And what should the American people be listening for tonight? Alex Gangitano, White House correspondent for The Hill, covers President Biden, top officials in the administration. And one of the things I love about Alex is it's not just politics, it's policy. And we believe it's policy first. Politics is downstream. And Alex, welcome back to the show.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, and Alex, as you look at what you're looking for, that we all should be looking for, what are some of the things that stand out, maybe a little under the radar? We know things about his age, and we know things about former President Trump. We get all those pieces. What's underneath all of that you're watching for tonight that we all ought to be thinking about?
Yeah. So, of course, as you mentioned, this is going on during a campaign season and with focus turning to the general election. So there's obviously a lot of politics involved, but a lot of it has to be policy, and it should be policy when it's the State of the Union, as you said. So I think what we'll be seeing is the president talk about what he's done on domestic policy issues, on foreign policy issues, and then talk about what he would do with another 4 years. When it comes to foreign policy, some interesting things that I'll be watching for is, one, if he changes his rhetoric at all on the war in the Middle East. We've seen Democrats push back. We've seen protests follow him around the country because of his pro-Israel stance. The president's not going to call for a permanent ceasefire in the Middle East. I'm pretty sure of that. I don't think that he'll change his stance that much. But will he maybe target Israel more for the lack of humanitarian aid that can get into Gaza, or not speak as flattering towards Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? I think we'll be watching for just what kind of change in tones or any shift that comes out of him. In terms of the war in Ukraine, I think we're going to see him really pushing Congress to provide more funding for the war effort there. Another thing that I'll be watching for is his rhetoric on the border and border security. Of course, last week we saw the president go to a Texas border town. We also saw the former president do it at the same time. The president's been really focusing on just blaming Republicans for the fact that bipartisan border bill didn't get passed. It was negotiated by a group of senators, endorsed by the White House, and basically became dead on arrival in the House. So I'm curious if they think that message is actually resonating with voters and he'll continue to blame Republicans for that, or if he'll try to change the narrative there and go at it at a different approach if that's not really resonating with voters. And, polling has shown that people blame Biden for the border, period. So clearly they have to change up their messaging there if they want to not be blamed.
Yeah, and there are so many nuances to all of that, and as you said, all of that in the context of the backdrop of the 2024 election cycle. I do think the foreign policy is going to be very, very interesting there, because politically it is the challenge for the president, especially in some of those swing states like Michigan and Minnesota, Wisconsin. How he frames that, I think, is going to be really important. The other thing that you pointed out in your piece today at thehill.com, which I loved because I think it's a great question. That is, what else gets time and attention? Because that often tells you where someone's priorities are, where the things that really matter to them. And as you alluded to, it is the beginning of making the case of what he would do with the next 4 years. What are you watching for there?
Yeah, so we've seen the president kind of tout some of these already. A lot of what he's going to say he wants to do with another 4 years is largely contingent, I think, on if Congress is Democratic or not. If he wins re-election and he has another Republican House or Republican Senate, a lot of the things that he wants to get done still won't be able to get done. Things like gun legislation or codifying Roe v. Wade, we're still not going to see those be able to pass the House or the Senate or whatever. But I think he's also going to, besides, the significant attention, like we were saying, on foreign policy issues, I think he's going to talk about the legislation that he put through that he really wants Americans to notice and be focused on this election season. And that's things like the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS bill, which basically increased semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S., and then the big Democrats' Inflation Reduction Act, which has incentives for clean energy investment. And we're also going to see him focusing on things that he thinks lower costs for Americans, like lowering prescription drug costs, preserving Medicare and expanding people's rights on that. So I think we're going to see him try to tout, the so-called Bidenomics. I don't know if he'll actually use that term, but his economic agenda to try to make it clear to Americans that he thinks that's something that is lower in cost for them.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that just real quickly in our last couple of minutes, because I think it's one of the areas where the president has struggled connecting with the American people. So you talk the Bidenomics term, I think, is probably not going to make an appearance. I think you're absolutely right on that. But he's also struggled with this. He's had these accomplishments. You listed them off. They're really easy. CHIPS, the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, all of these things. And yet there seems to be such a disconnect from what he wants to tout as wins. And you could say these are policy wins. And what the American people are experiencing with inflation or around the kitchen table stuff. Have you heard or sensed anything from your sources in terms of how they might try to frame that in a way that maybe is a little more congruent with what the American people are feeling, so that he actually does get credit for the things that he's done?
Right. Yeah, as you're saying, it's been a serious uphill battle for them to try to get credit for the economy that is improving in a sense. It has avoided a recession, even though, economic experts thought that there would be one. So there are positive things about this economy, but people are not feeling it. When they go to the grocery store, when they go to the gas station, they still think prices are too high. So I think what we're going to see, and what I've, when I talk to sources here in Washington, is that the president still has to walk this fine line and kind of figure out how to tiptoe around the issue that he can't declare a win on the economy, right? Because then somebody watching in, Utah who thinks that the price of eggs is still too high will be like, okay, well, that's not what I'm feeling. Why are you here declaring a win? So I think that, to put it in so many words, I think that he has to walk this fine line, not declare a win, but say that, here's the things that I'm focused on. Here's what I'm working on. Here's the legislation I've implemented that in the long run can save you money. The cost of insulin's lower. If families have that cost, they're spending less money, something like that. That might not hit every American, but that he could just outline the things that he's done. But it's tough because he definitely cannot declare a win there.
Yeah, no spike in the ball, no mission accomplished sign for the president tonight on that front.
That's right.
Great perspective, great analysis as always. Alex Gangitano, White House correspondent for The Hill, covers President Biden, top officials, policy first, politics second. Always appreciate that. Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
All right, again, that's Alex from The Hill. You can check out her piece at thehill.com. And I think she nailed it in terms of where things are. It is a tricky needle to thread for the president, and we'll see how he does that. Again, that will be live at 7 p.m. tonight, Utah time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. The president will enter the well of the House of Representatives and deliver the annual State of the Union address. And we'll continue to watch that and break all of that down. All right, we're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. We always say words have meaning and the meaning matters, but what if the word is emergency and it's used in conjunction with emergency spending? And what is that really, and how much is it costing you? We're going to check that out with Emma Camp from Reason coming up next. Stick around.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. South Salt Lake City Council member Paul Sanchez is being censured by other members of the group. The council says it's because he violated the code of conduct with his social media posts being critical of elected officials. Now, Sanchez says he believes it's an excuse to silence him because he's been working to expose corruption in the city, and he says he's far from done.
I'm going to continue talking about it until something is done, until this is resolved, until Mayor Cherie Woods either resigns or retires or is put in jail. I am not going to stop talking about this.
Sanchez claims multiple departments are working together to protect themselves from legal and other trouble. We're waiting for comment from the city council. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. In a speech at the Anti-Defamation League, Attorney General Merrick Garland says the Justice Department has seen a tripling in domestic threats against Jewish people since the October 7th Hamas attacks.
The FBI reports that between October 7th, 2023 and January 30th of this year, the Bureau opened over 3 times more anti-Jewish hate crime investigations than in the previous 4 months.
And looking at your money at this moment, we've got some, the Dow up 130 points right now. The NASDAQ looks like it's closed the trading day up at 241 points right now. And it looks like our weather's going to dry out for the next day or so. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
When you choose Performance Automotive in Bountiful, you're choosing selection, convenience, and exceptional service. 4 locations: Performance Ford Lincoln, Performance Honda, Performance Toyota, and Ford Truck Country. All dedicated to delivering you the best auto experience anywhere. Looking for your first car? Maybe you want rugged power or the stylish ride of your dreams. New or used. See it all at PerformanceBountiful.com. PerformanceBountiful.com.
Rick at LoansByRick.com has some important information for anyone in Utah and Idaho who's thinking of buying a house. Do it now. Don't wait until summer, because home prices in those 2 states will likely increase by 10 to 20% due to in-migration from California and other states. That means a house that costs $400,000 right now will go up by 40 to 80 grand with multiple offers. Interest rates may drop later in the year, possibly to the 6% range, but the increased cost of the home will mean that your monthly payments will go up by a lot. So start looking and buy now. Refinance when the interest rates go down. Waiting to buy your home will only hurt you in the long run. For more details and buying strategies, call Rick at loansbyrick.com right now. 801-809-SAVE. Rick can evaluate your situation and get you on the path to buying a home today. 801-809-SAVE or click loansbyrick.com. Rick Kirschenbaum, NMLS 241179 and Vintage Lending, NMLS 287106 are equal housing lenders. Some restrictions apply.
Only one type of burger. For every pallet. Fries are extra. Large in size. We've got the shakes. Going over the brim.
Hey, this is Chris from JCW's. Put a positive, delicious spin on your day at any one of our 5 locations. In Lehigh, American Fork, Provo, South Jordan, or Harriman. JCW's, quality and a lot of it.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Good speeds on the Valley freeways. We have the cleanup of a crash in Kaysville, southbound Main Street at 200 North in the right lane. Again, it's in the final clearing stages. With IFA's Crabgrass Preventer Plus Lawn Food, you'll stop those pesky weeds before they even start. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And a KSL weather, cool and dry tomorrow, high around 43. It'll warm up by Sunday with a high of 60. Monday and Tuesday, there's a chance of rain again. And right now, 40 degrees with some light rain. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
You've heard me say it on this program many times. Words have meaning, and the meaning matters, except for when it comes to words like emergency and spending, especially when they're linked together. They don't seem to actually be congruent, but it's incredibly expensive. To you, to me, to the country as a whole. And so we want to get behind what is emergency spending. Is it real? And what is it costing you? And how is it hurting us with our burgeoning $34+ trillion national debt? Someone who's been underneath the words, the meaning, and why it matters. Emma Camp, of course, is the assistant editor at Reason.com. And she actually has a beautiful piece on this. You need to read this one. Congress wastes billions with bogus emergency declarations. And Emma, welcome back to the show.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
I knew we needed to have this conversation today. So before President Biden steps up tonight and declares anything an emergency or some new program that's absolutely necessary that has to be done by Friday, and $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, give us the breakdown. What is actually going on? I think everyone understands if there is an emergency, but let's define it. What is an emergency, and how are presidents using this?
So over the past 30 years or so, about 10% of federal budget dollars have been emergency funding. Now, that term actually, as applied, doesn't really mean anything. So yes, there are technically 5 criteria that emergency funds have to meet. You know, they basically require it to fit the colloquial definition of emergency. Emergency funding should basically be there for, say, if we have to suddenly spend a bunch of money to help with a natural disaster. The problem is that those rules have gone completely unenforced. So when the government wants to spend a bunch of money, all they have to do is say that something is an emergency, and then they can do it basically no questions asked, and they don't have to pay attention to discretionary spending caps. And so as a result, you have spending for things like the DNC and the RNC or NASA space exploration, which, you know, maybe the government wants to fund, but certainly don't meet anyone's definition of a true emergency.
Yeah, I think we all get it. Natural disaster, fire, flood, earthquake, that all makes a whole lot of sense. But so often what happens in these emergency things, suddenly there's all kinds of stuff that gets tucked in there that how do you say that's part of it? And so what is the process to reining that back in so that we're not just doing things by the stroke of a presidential pen, but we actually have to dig into these and have some transparency so we can have some accountability?
So I think when it comes to these congressional spending packages that we get, I think what's most important is that we start actually enforcing rules around emergency designations. So if there truly is an emergency and that needs emergency funding, again, like a natural disaster would be a good example, some kind of humanitarian issue, sure. But when it comes to just sort of government pork, these random projects, often for things like building new facilities, stuff that isn't actually emergent, make Congress actually put it in the budget, right? Instead of making an excuse to drive up our debt even further, really force people in Congress to make room for that thing if they actually need it.
Yeah, and one of the things that you pointed out in your piece, another friend of the show, your colleague Eric Boehm, pointed out in Reason Magazine a great quote, just because emergency spending bypasses some of the scrutiny applied to the normal budgetary process, it's just really become a convenient way for lawmakers and presidents to hike spending, add to the national debt with really no accountability at all. And you highlighted in your piece some of those more egregious violations of things that were clearly had nothing to do with an emergency, but were a nice way to get some funding passed.
Yeah, right. It really is a way to avoid accountability and to drive up spending and to drive up the national debt, when in fact what we should be doing is cutting spending, because right now our national debt is a huge looming existential problem. And what we certainly don't need is spending billions of taxpayer dollars on supposedly emergency projects like the RNC and the DNC getting extra governmental support.
Yeah, that's the last thing we need. I think cutting that is an emergency. We need to make sure that happens. That I would actually vote we rush that through quickly, because I think that would be an easy one. What else are you going to continue to watch for in this space? Again, it's one of those that we don't really think about. We hear about it usually, when there is a natural disaster of some sort. But this happens all the time. And how do we actually get our arms around this in a way that actually can be transformational in terms of the process?
Well, I think the problem with a lot of federal spending is that it's trapped in these really long bills that nobody reads. And, every year there's all this debate about the budget, but no one's actually looking into it. And so I think really reforming how we do emergency spending and actually forcing people to limit emergency spending to actual emergencies is very important. And another is sort of really getting people to pay a closer attention to what we're spending taxpayer money on, and, to stop treating taxpayers as basically an endless piggy bank.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of it. And I think just getting Congress to do their job when they're supposed to. We keep pointing out the fact that the current battles that we're having over shutdown, showdowns, and all of that is last year's homework that still hasn't been done. It is March. We should be getting near the end of the process for the 12 appropriations bills that are going to be due on September 30th, because we do have a breaking news, Emma. We've decided here on Inside Sources that September 30th comes every year, and so there never should be a surprise by Congress that they have to get their job done by the 30th of the month. Is there any hope on the horizon in terms of what you're watching in Congress? Can we get back to regular orders? Is there a problem solvers caucus? Is there a group in the center left to center right who's going to say, hey, we got to quit doing this the way we're doing it?
I mean, it sounds pessimistic to say no, but the thing is, everybody likes to spend money, right? Everybody wants to be able to go back to their district and say, see, I got you this brand new building. I built you this new prison. I did this thing. And that requires money. And so it really isn't going to win people a lot of favors if they say, actually, no, I want to give you less stuff.
Yeah. Or we were talking earlier in the program that it's the broccoli versus the cotton candy brigade. And it is so tough to sell broccoli when they're giving cotton candy away for free. And we seem to be stuck in the cotton candy land.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right. Great piece, as always. Emma Camp is the assistant editor at Reason. You can always check her things out at reason.com. This is an important one, and Emma nailed it on this idea that the existential threat, $34 trillion, is a big number. It's not going away with inflation and interest rates up. That payment, just the interest payment alone, is becoming phenomenal. And then what is going to happen is one of two things. Either we just have out-of-control inflation or we have draconian forced cuts that will hurt the poor and the most vulnerable the most. And so it's time to pick broccoli over cotton candy. Emma, as always, thanks so much for your perspective. Great writing, great thinking, as always.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and that's Emma Camp, assistant editor at Reason. Love having Emma on the show. And this is one of those conversations, not the fun one to have, not the bumper sticker slogan. This is the real conversation. And as we look at what President Biden's going to try to deliver tonight in the State of the Union, is it going to be a lot of cotton candy giveaways? Or is he going to say to the American people, it's time to eat your broccoli? That's a big test. And to me, that's a leadership test. And that's what we're going to get to as we round out the program today. We'll step aside for one last commercial break. And when we come back, it will be time for my annual State of the Union address. Stay with us on Inside Sources. We'll be right back.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede, except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah. They install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
You wouldn't know it, but most financial advisors are put in a box. I'm Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I want to provide you a little insight about financial advisors. Most financial advisors have to sell what their company requires them to sell, and many advisors have to only adhere to what's called a suitability standard. A suitability standard is a limited standard of care, not requiring what's sold to be best, just suitable. Advisors with this loose standard often have limited investment and product selection. Trajan Wealth is held to a fiduciary standard, which is the highest standard of care in the advisory business. And that's just one of the many reasons we have billions of dollars under our care and attract clients from other advisors. Raise your standards today and call Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Your gas light's on. We need to fill up.
Gas around here is too expensive.
Don't drive all over searching for the lowest prices. Just download the free Upside app and get cash back for every gallon of gas you buy. I've already made around $200.
You can make that kind of cash back just for buying gas? I'm stopping now to download Upside and fill up my tank. Download the free Upside app to earn real cash back every time you buy gas. Cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card. Download the free Upside app now and use promo code GIFT for an extra 25 cents per gallon cash back on your first fill up. That's promo code GIFT.
Held over due to popular demand. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Utah State Fair Park. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Utah State Fair Park. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Utah State Fair Park. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Utah State Fair Park. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Utah State Fair Park. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a member of the South Salt Lake City Council being censured by other council members after he accused city officials of corruption. Second, a couple of wells in Salt Lake City have tested positive for PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals. Third, Attorney General Merrick Garland says anti-Semitic incidents around the country are way up since the war in Gaza began. Right now, 40 degrees with light rain in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson, and as promised, we are going to round out the program today with my version of the State of the Union. Now, as many of you know, for over 2 decades now, I have annually attempted to write a personal version of the State of the Union address. I think everybody should, actually. I've never done this as an endeavor to write what I think a sitting president, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican, would or could or should say to the nation. It's just my version of a message that I would deliver to the nation. So here we are once again. Tonight, President Joe Biden will deliver the State of the Union tonight. We'll cover that, of course, here on KSL News Radio. He's going to do that in a very difficult political environment. There are challenges here at home and abroad. Many of them are real and really hard, very tricky, very delicate issues to be handled. The American people are facing significant challenges on many fronts. And I believe they're also faced with many extraordinary opportunities if we choose to lean into them. So just to reframe this, I'm not suggesting that President Biden would, could, or should deliver what I'm about to share. So this is simply the State of the Union from the perspective of one guy with an opinion and a microphone. That's me. So here we go. Mr. Speaker, members of Congress, and my fellow Americans, I thank you for joining me as I carry out the duty outlined in Article 2, Section 3, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which reads, "The President shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the State of the Union, and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient." So I will remind you that the founders of this great nation designed this to be focused on the State of the Union, not the state of the government. I think it's both fair and safe to say that the state of many of the institutions of government is suboptimal today. The state of American politics is beyond dreadful and badly broken. We've learned by sad experience that opposition is uncomplicated, deconstruction is undemanding. Yet we've allowed this approach to become the operating manual for discourse in this country. And while it's easy to be pessimistic about the state of brokenness of many things in America, I will state that I am bullish on the state of the nation, the future of the country, because the state of the Union, the people of the Union, is strong. So I'm going to ask that you listen not necessarily to my voice for the next few moments, but to the views and the echoes of voices and principles from America's past, the whispers that carry the secrets to our country's still, I believe, inspiring future. Adlai Stevenson, I think, said it best, and I think most appropriately for our time. He said this: "Let's talk sense to the American people. Let's tell them the truth. that there are no gains without pains, that we are now on the eve of great decisions, not easy decisions. What counts now is not just what we're against, but what we are for. Who leads us is less important than what leads us, what convictions, what courage, what faith. I think Adlai Stevenson got it right. It's not who leads us, it's what leads us, what principles, what courage, what faith, what convictions. Those are the things that matter to the country. And we need to have an honest conversation about what those are, why those matter, and how we apply those better today. So the State of the Union has very little to do with politics or politicians. It has everything to do with conviction, courage, and faith that founded the nation and continues to fan the flame of freedom in our hearts, in our homes, and in our communities. So to frame this conversation, I want to turn to a great American statesman, Daniel Webster, whose commitment to American principles was known across the country and around the world. His oratory elevated rigorous debate. I think his voice still echoes in the House chamber as well as in the well of the United States Senate. There's an old classic in Stephen Vincent Benet's tale regarding Daniel Webster. He whimsically describes what you're likely to hear and a question you will be asked if you actually visit the grave of Daniel Webster. So Benet wrote, every time there's a thunderstorm around Marshfield, which is where Daniel Webster's grave is, they say you can hear his rolling voice in the hollows of the sky. And they say if you go to his grave and speak loud and clear, the ground will begin to shiver and the trees will begin to shake. And after a while, you'll hear his deep voice saying, "Neighbor, how stands the Union?" Then you better answer, "The Union stands as she stood, rock-bottomed and copper-sheathed, one and indivisible." And if you don't, he's likely to rear right out of the ground. So my question to everybody who can hear is, how do we ensure that the state of our union is rock-bottomed, copper-sheathed, one, and indivisible? The foundation of this country must remain rock-bottomed and bedrock-based if America's confidence is to continue on. This is not about narcissism. This is not about arrogance. We are not a nation that's destined to decline, nor one that's going to slink off and cower in the corner of the world. We have a role to play. Sadly, there are far too many citizens in this country who've lost confidence in themselves, lost confidence in the inherent goodness of the people and communities around them. They've lost confidence in our free market system and have lost confidence in the power of the American dream. So we cannot and must not cast away our confidence. Now, the vast majority of Americans don't have confidence that Congress and government will do the right thing. That's a sad day. So to restore confidence in government, I'm calling on both houses of Congress and members across the political spectrum to live up to the principles they profess to believe. Because I believe coalitions are ready to be formed. Compromise has a seat at the table, and it only takes a little courage to actually show up. So your duties in Congress are simple. They're outlined in the Constitution. They are not complicated. It's time to end politics as usual in America. Now, the copper sheath that Webster referred to serves as a protector to the foundation. So Congress needs to pass a budget, the corresponding 12 appropriations bills, as the Constitution requires, on time, under budget. September 30th always comes, my friends, and that is when the government needs to be funded. No shutdown showdowns ever again. Unnecessary, unneeded, and un-American not to do the job outlined in the Constitution. So we're going to do this every single year. It's time to end the threat of government shutdowns and using them as a blunt force instrument of uncertainty for political purposes. The uncertainty ends up being thrust upon the American people, economic markets, small business owners, and our allies around the world. It's no longer acceptable, and it never should have been. Finally, we have to remain as a people one and indivisible. Sadly, our lack of confidence in government and elected leaders is beginning to fray the fabric of society to the point we no longer trust members of our own community. Those who have been pursuing political power or media prominence or campaign cash would have us believe that we are inextricably divided, and thus no one should trust anyone. But there isn't an issue before us upon which the American people and the elected officials who represent them cannot come together and solve. So political purity tests at both ends of the spectrum might be great for those in power, but it prevents America's inherent problem-solving spirit, unity, compromise, and coalitions from forming or flourishing. I believe the answers to poverty, health care, immigration, upward mobility, criminal justice, border security, mental health, Second Amendment rights, religious liberty, minority rights, education, and a host of other issues, foreign and domestic, are well within the grasp of the united people of the United States of America. So I close this version of the State of the Union. I hope that people might hear the echo of the voice of Daniel Webster as he asks each of us individually and all of us collectively as Americans, neighbor, how stands the Union? And my hope is that each of us and all of us will resolutely whisper in response that the Union stands as she stood, rock bottom and copper sheath, one and indivisible. And that wraps up Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. That's my State of the Union. You'll hear President Biden later on tonight. Thanks for joining us on KSL News Radio today. And as always, as you go out into the